and cause a problem. Good morning, I'm Judy Ann Files. Welcome to Forum. It's nice to see you all that you're willing to follow us through our construction this morning and figure out how to get into this room. So this morning, it's not very obvious, we're going to talk about getting people back to work. So I'd like to introduce to you Richard Parr. He's the Montrose Business Services. Rich has worked in the Montrose area for over 25 years. He was the store manager for Walgreens and brings a wealth of knowledge to this current position. Amanda Waltrip, Regional Program Assistant. Amanda came from the government and nonprofit world and has worked with the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment for nearly 6 years. And then Brooke Snyder. Brooke is the Montrose Employment and Training Specialist. Brooke grew up in Norwood. We won't hold that too much against her.
That's the reason I just didn't say West End. I specified.
She started with the Montrose Workforce Center earlier this year after working with the Wyoming workforce system. So welcome. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, we experienced I work regionally, so I work with the Montrose, Delta, Gunnison, Cortez, and Durango workforce centers. And regionally, we experienced quite a lot of turnover over the past year. As you'll kind of get to know through our presentation, people are kind of re-examining their priorities. And Brooke is one reason why is an example of someone who was hired during the pandemic, and we've been really lucky to have her. So we're happy that she's from Norwood, and she brings a good perspective. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for having us today. I just kind of want to clarify something. We're employees of the Colorado Department of Labor. We work at the Montrose Workforce Center. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't share with you when the labor shortage is going to end. So I don't want to make you think that we're going to be talking about anything too out there today. So, but what we can talk about is where we have been, where we are now, and how we can help people get back to work. So thank you again so much for having us today. So just to give you a little perspective, in the first weeks of the pandemic, we experienced about 10,000 phone calls across our 5 workforce centers. We had at least one person in the office because the rest of us we were required to stay home. Here in Montrose, we had Rich, and what would happen was we'd get call after call after call. Rich would answer either try and catch the phone as the calls came in, or catch the messages on the answering machine and then field it out to us in the field. It worked really well because there were a lot of really scared people out there. Today, things have normalized, and I'm really happy to say that yesterday we only had 18 phone calls total in the Montrose Workforce Center. So that things are normalizing, but this entire time, even though we still aren't open, our doors are still closed to the public, we are open by appointment only. People can come in if they need our help, they need to use our computers and whatnot. We're serving a lot of people online, either over the phone or through Google Meet virtually. So to give you a little bit more perspective, the week of March 21st, 2020, the state of Colorado had about just under 20,000 initial unemployment claims filed with the Colorado Department of Labor. The very next week, those numbers tripled. And to kind of put this in a little perspective in comparing it to the Great Recession in 2010, the highest amount of initial claims that we experienced in 1 week was at the beginning of 2010, and it was about 7,750 initial claims. So our system was overloaded, and people had a really hard time getting through to unemployment. Therefore, they were calling just about every workforce center in Colorado. A typical amount of calls to the unemployment call center prior to COVID-19 on one day was about 1,000 calls. On just March 30th, they experienced 225,000 call attempts. Obviously, people aren't getting through when you're experiencing that high of a volume. And also to kind of clarify, on a non-pandemic or recession week, a typical amount of initial claims that Colorado would experience was about 400 claims. So I tell you all of this just to kind of give you a really big overview of what we were experiencing across the Colorado Department of Labor system. But I'm really happy to tell you that just last week, the Colorado Department of Labor reported their lowest week of initial claims since the beginning of the pandemic, just over 3,000 initial claims. So I'm hoping that means things hoping things are going back to a normal, or at least a new normal. I am also happy to tell you that nearly 50% of people who are unemployed report that they have found work within 15 weeks of being unemployed. So I know kind of the thought is everyone who's on unemployment right now is just staying on unemployment because they can and they're making more money than if they were working, but that's not completely true, and we can kind of talk about that as we go on. People are getting back out there and trying to work as well. So September 4th, this is the day that the federal benefits that are available through the American Rescue Plan Act will end. That's the week that it will end. Coloradans who are currently receiving these benefits will not be able to request payment from these programs after this date. And this includes, what happened was they expanded the amount of unemployment further than a traditional person who gets laid off. So they expanded it to people who were gig workers, someone who worked for Uber, didn't necessarily pay into unemployment. Also to business owners who had to halt their business for a little while, that kind of thing. This also includes the $300 extra payment from the federal government on top of the regular unemployment benefits. So with targeted emails and social media posts and the use of both traditional and digital media, Colorado Department of Labor is focused on connecting unemployed workers with career counseling, job search assistance, training opportunities, and more, and that's where we can come in. The pandemic changed a lot of things for a lot of people, and people are restructuring their priorities. They're looking for better jobs, quality jobs. They're not looking at jobs that are low paid and that don't offer benefits. And also another thing to think about, childcare has been a huge issue for a number of people. We are in a childcare drought out here in western Colorado. Finding childcare, and also housing, it all intersects when it comes to the working world. Lots of factors go into why people aren't working at the moment. And it's also important to remember that we were in a labor shortage prior to the pandemic. The pandemic exacerbated that labor shortage, and like I mentioned, people are re-examining their priorities. Wages and the quality of work have a greater impact on a worker's willingness to find employment, more so than unemployment benefits. So what do we mean by quality of work? Well, a quality job has wages that allow for financial self-sufficiency. It has schedules that are predictable but also flexible. It has hours that are reliable. It takes into account family life, So having a good work-life balance. Successes are shared among employees. Advancement opportunities are provided. Taking into account culture provides opportunities for improved health, to improve health, and decisions are shared among employees. Overall, employers of quality jobs experience less turnover and error costs, increase employee engagement, and increase the competition and profitability. What we're seeing here in Montrose is happening across the country as well. You may have seen in the paper recently that 66% of adults have seriously considered changing their occupation or field of work, especially if they tend to be currently in lower paying jobs. I also read yesterday that 8 in 10 managers say workers need more education, credentials, or training. And 73% of workers say they would pursue upskilling opportunities if their employer offered it to them. But nearly half of workers, about 47%, say they don't understand which skills matter most to employers. So this is an area where we at the Workforce Center can really help. And so I'm going to hand it over to Rich to kind of talk a little bit more.
Thank you, Amanda. So this last year was really something, right? I mean, totally something none of us had ever been through before. I know for myself, I primarily do business services and outreach in Montrose Workforce Center, but in our office, we also cover all of Montrose County, all of San Miguel County, and all of Uray County. So sometimes I spend a good portion of my day just traveling to the west end. It's got to be the longest county in America. Really, you know. So we had to learn a lot more about unemployment, and that was all going very well up until the point where unemployment in the middle of everything decided to switch to a brand new system. So at that point, it just became kind of what department do you need to be referred to, and this is the phone number, and you know, just call them up, talk to them. You may have to schedule a call back because 25,000 calls in one day. I mean, that's just people hanging up, hitting redial, hanging up, hitting redial. It was just chaos for the poor people at unemployment. I certainly wouldn't have wanted to be one of them. So we're finally be able to get back to what we primarily do, and that's help people find jobs. So our main way of doing that is through our connectingcolorado.com website, and there are two sides to that. The first side is for employers, where they can enter their own jobs if they register their company on the Connecting Colorado site. They can control how long the job runs for, what all the qualifications and duties are of it. We find that most of them, though, still contact us with their job qualifications and duties and all of that. We create the job template for them and post it on our site. So it covers everything from the duties, the qualifications, the skills that are needed, preferred skills, if there are some. Some of those might be that you need to have a driver's license in order to come to work for them, because you might need to drive to the post office and pick up mail. That's an example. The other side of that is the job seeker side. So they register as well and have full access to our site, look at all the jobs that we have listed, and they can look anywhere in the state of Colorado. So they just pick whatever community they want to look at and then go into that. They can do it by job type, so they can enter whatever skills that they have as far as the job itself, or they can do it by what their interest is if they're thinking about changing to another career field. Every one of our jobs has a how to apply link in it, so about 98% of the time it's going to go right to the employer's website. The other couple of percent are going to be the smaller businesses in Montrose where they maybe only want a generic application filled out and then sent over to them, and then both employers, whichever way that is, can decide who they want to interview at any given time. We're what I call the best four-letter word there is, and that's free. Okay, so all of our services and programs are funded by either the state or the federal government. So we do a lot of partnering with not just local schools, as it shows on here, but we also have partner agencies like Center for Mental Health, Health and Human Services, and a lot of nonprofits around, that need help with various things. So a lot of it, we work with candidates to coordinate job training and work experience opportunities, and sometimes we do on-the-job training with employers, or sometimes we create a work experience where in the on-the-job training part of it, we pay up to 50% of the wages during the training period. So helps get people going, and we're always hopeful that at the end of the training period, the employer wants to hire the individual that they're working with. So we can answer unemployment questions on a limited basis. Lots has changed in how unemployment works these days, so it's not quite as cut and dried as it used to be, where it was pretty simple to do a claim. Now they have to do an identification factor on it because of all the fraud that's been involved, and I'm sure you've probably heard a lot about that. The unemployment division is doing their best to protect the taxpayer dollars not being paid out to individuals who are just there to take the money. They're not real citizens of Montrose or the U.S. or whatever. So a lot of times we can connect claimants to unemployment through a hotline that we set up in our office. So we just do a conference call setting. So if I'm the claimant, I'll call the Workforce Center. They put me into a conference call setting, then they call up unemployment, and as soon as we make establish a connection, we put that call, all of it, into the conference room, and then at a certain point in time, probably about 5 to 10 minutes, an agent comes on the line and helps the individual if they have questions on why didn't my payment come this week, something happened with my claim and it's closed now, how do I open it again, and go on from there. So on the business side, of course, I talked about posting job openings, and we frequently offer assistance with that. So sometimes we have businesses that go, I'm not quite sure what I want this job to say as far as the duties and the qualifications and the skills that we're looking for. So we can assist with creating that. So we can also screen applicants, and some of that comes through doing testing. Take, for example, if an employer needs to know for sure that the person they're hiring is really good in Microsoft Office suites, we can test on PowerPoint, Excel, Word, things like that. We can also test for, and these are just examples, there's a lot more, medical terminology, QuickBooks, IT, things like that. So we also work with people on knowing what their hard skills and soft skills are to help fit the job. And then we also do a lot of times hiring events, career fairs, job fairs is an example. Of course, a lot of that has had to kind of be put on pause for now because of the pandemic. So, but we're little by little kind of getting back into what we're normally doing. So I'm back to doing outreach in the community again, which is one of the things I really love to do. And it's great to be able to serve people and help make that connection between employers and job seekers. We can educate employers on things like the Work Opportunity Tax Credit Program, which gives the employer a tax break for hiring people in certain segments of the population, like maybe it's a veteran, maybe it's somebody who's on food stamps and they can hire them and get them off of food stamps. Could be somebody that maybe they're a displaced home worker needing to get back out into the job world again because they lost their means of work for income. We also talk about the federal bonding program, which is for people who've taken a wrong turn in life, and it's a surety bond. It's good for 6 months free to the employer. against things like theft of tangible items like money or merchandise, things like that. And I equate it a lot to a car insurance policy. You don't get anything out of it unless you have an accident. Okay, and then the employer would file a claim to recover the amount that they've lost. So it's a way for someone who's taken a wrong turn. If an employer is kind of, well, I'd like to hire you, but I really don't know if I can trust you. Well, this helps get the employer off the fence and into the same side as the job seeker and help make them, once again, a more viable member of the community. So we provide information on labor laws, so hence the name, Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. So we can refer you, we can give information on the laws in general. We are not attorneys, we do not give advice. The same with the people that are in the labor law department in Denver. If we refer somebody to them, they can give advice all about the law, and they're much more versed than we are on all of it. But they also are not attorneys. So if you know somebody that is thinking about or is having an issue with, maybe they haven't gotten money back from an employer that they worked for, they're going to have to hire their own attorney, as an example, to work on that. If it's a job, it's wage related, and it's a job that was listed on Connecting Colorado, our regional manager will jump in on that and try to help resolve that before it has to go further. So, we also provide labor market information, and we have a couple different ways we can do that. One's through Colorado labor market information that is part of the Department of Labor, and we can get information on, let's just say manufacturing as an example, for this side of the hill, as they call it. So for the western slope, how many people are employed in manufacturing in our area, what the average starting wage is, what the mean wage is, and what an experienced wage is. So both sides of the equation can see what maybe they should be offering as an employer, and a job seeker can see that it's, they're getting a fair wage for the experience that they have. And also wage and hour. Anything about labor laws, again, related to wage and hour. Of course, I'm sure you maybe have heard just recently the equal pay for equal individuals. So men and women should be getting the same pay for doing the same job. So we can give information on that as well. So then for the job seeker, we help with resumes, job searches. We have a small resource center that has 8 computers that they can come in and sign in on and look for jobs and apply for jobs, as I mentioned earlier. And once we get open again to the public, we'll go back to doing that normally. Now we pretty much take one person at a time and bring them in. So we can do mock interviews where we are the employer, and we ask the 25 most frequently asked questions that might be asked in an interview. And then we come along behind that as the experts from the Workforce Center and help an applicant, with talk more about your experience. You're selling yourself short, or maybe don't mention that you got, 2 kids at home and you don't really have daycare, You want to make sure you get as far down the line as you can with that. Maybe something can happen to help alleviate that. So, the career coaching line with the My Next Move, that happens to be an interest-based assessment, and I always tell people that if you do what you love, that's the career. So, the fact that in my lifetime I've only had, probably 3 or 4 jobs, I guess I really love what I do working with people. So. There's also skills-based assessments as well. And in the Resource Center, we can give people access to computers, as I mentioned. They can use our phones as long as it's work-related. If they need copies of anything that's work-related, or they needed to something to give their employer, we can do copies, print things for them. And of course, all of our offices give veteran priority of service. So veterans are at the front of the line in every case. So. These are the fastest growing occupations in Montrose, and I'm sure you can see that the tallest graph is sales and related occupations, so that's pretty much all the retail type positions. Normally with healthcare, this one you can see they broke out practitioners away from the support occupations like CNAs, home healthcare, that type of thing. So this will give you an idea of what's growing here in Montrose at this point in time. So.
We have all this available that we can give to you separately.
And so now I'm going to turn it over to Brooke, and she's going to tell you a little bit about our actual programs to get people back to work. So.
Perfect, thank you, Rich. So what happens if we have Rich out front and he has an individual who needs more than Rich can provide out front? Well, we have our job training programs, and those offer a little bit more of intensive job search and also job training programs where we can take people who may not be employed currently or would like to upskill or get into a better job and help them in a training program. So we have a handful of different training programs, but at the core, they all offer these basic services. So we're having some one-on-one services with a career coach. That's what I do. We have a handful of career coaches in our region. So once you are interested in a job training program, you're assigned to a career coach, and we kind of help them walk through that process. The case management piece of just helping you get connected to additional community resources. The training piece, of course. We have different kinds of training that I'll talk about here in a second that includes traditional training and then the work-based learning opportunities. And then we have our supportive services. And supportive services is something that you may not consider on the front end of a training program. It's like maybe you work with the Workforce Center and we put you through a program to become a nurse. And you start work on Monday, but you don't have any scrubs. Well, you haven't got a paycheck yet. And so we want to make sure that the Workforce Center can come in and help you get a set of scrubs, some good shoes, so that way you're able to start work successfully on your first day. So we have those services as well that kind of couple with all of our job training programs. So we have a couple different training models that we use. One is just traditional training. So that's what you think of when you say, hey, go check out the Workforce Center. I think they help people get their CDL. Or we're sending people to Technical College of the Rockies to get a medical assistant degree. That's what people think of when they think of our job training programs. But something we're really focusing on right now, because our goal now is to get people back to work, are our work-based learning opportunities. And that's where we work with employers and employee to put that person in a work experience where they're on the job and they're earning a wage, and maybe they are learning skills that they didn't have before. Perhaps they may not be able to apply for a job on Connecting Colorado and get that job right away, but they have that interest and they have that commitment. And so what we do is we work with that employer to say, hey, we have this person in our job training program who's really interested, and they have the support of the Workforce Center. And we'll either come on and pay up to 50% of the wages, or if it's a work experience, we'll come on and pay all of the wages for a temporary amount of time. So like Rich said, certainly we want that employer to keep that person on long term, but we know that doesn't always work out. So you have a person in the back at the Workforce Center that helps you kind of navigate that, work with that person specifically, and you're getting someone who is trained, but also who's committed to the program. It's a chance for that job seeker to gain on-the-job skills and training that might not otherwise be available to them. And it's a chance for you as an employer to get people who are really committed and skilled, and you get to kind of train them up as you wish with the Workforce Center as your support person. I think a really great example of this that we're doing currently is up in Delta. We have an employer who interviewed and hired an individual who she believes is going to be a great licensed appraiser. Well, to become a licensed appraiser, you need two things. You need service hours on the job, and you need training classes. So what we're doing with that employer is we're going to pay up to 50% of the wages for that person, while the employer pays for the training classes. So it's just a really great example of how we're taking people who might not qualify for a job on the get-go and putting them in positions where they have the chance to be really successful. Okay, so those are our work-based learning programs and our training programs. So what are the different programs we offer? We have a couple different types of training programs. The first one is our traditional ones. These are the ones we're running consistently. These are continuously going. There's dedicated staff to work those programs. And then we have our disaster recovery grants. And those are our pandemic-related grants. And that's just all hands on deck. Rich might be working one, Amanda might be working one, I might be working one. It's just whoever can help that person connect with those pandemic-related needs, we're gonna all hands on deck for that. So our traditional services are very individualized in terms of their services and their eligibility. If you think you have someone who's interested in a training program, send them our way. You don't have to figure out if they're going to be eligible or not. That's my job. And I have people that come to me and they're like, I'm not sure this is a good fit for me. Well, let's see if it is. I can go through, I can figure out if you're going to be eligible, what a good program might be for you. If at the end we can't make it work, fine. But come to me and we'll see what we can do. If I have a committed individual in front of me, I'm going to do my best to get them the job training that they need. We help mitigate barriers to employment. That's our biggest piece of the traditional training program, is the barriers piece. And so a lot of what we see in terms of barriers are long-term unemployed. Maybe you've been out of the Workforce Center for a couple years and what you used to do either isn't available anymore or your skills are a little bit out of date. So you can come to us, we can help you get skilled back up. If there's a training program you're interested in, we can help pay for that. We help you fill out the financial aid application. We help you navigate signing up for classes. We're really just a team member for you as you navigate through that training process. And we pay for stuff, so, I mean, you can't really be beat. A lot of what we're seeing are people who are lacking computer skills. Maybe they're unwilling or they're uncomfortable in learning computer skills. We can help navigate that as well, whether it's a training program that we put you in, whether you and I sit down together to fill out a job application. There's a ton of ways that we can help you navigate that. So essentially, that traditional program is just helping overcome individual barriers by addressing your specific training and support needs. Now our disaster recovery grants. These came about just because of the pandemic, and they're slated to go through the first of next year. They get a little convoluted, much like a lot of the pandemic stuff has been, but it's that you're unemployed due to the pandemic. So you might have been laid off, your job might come back around, but we don't know. Maybe your small business closed down because you weren't able to keep your doors open. If you're unemployed due to the pandemic, you can come to the Workforce Center and we can put you in a work experience that helps you work with an employer that is a pandemic-related job. So that sounds crazy, but let me give you some examples. So you've gone to the hospital for labs or whatever, and there's a temperature taker at the front door. That's a pandemic-related job. That job didn't exist before the pandemic. However, now we're seeing that there are job things or job experiences that need to be done that weren't needed before the pandemic. Sanitation, cleaning things more than a normal janitor might actually clean things. Those are pandemic-related employment. So if you're just wanting another option than unemployment, if you want to keep your skills up, if you want to get out of the house every day, come to us. We'll work with an employer to find you a pandemic-related job, especially for someone who maybe their job's going to come back around. Maybe they're just laid off right now, and next month it's going to come back. Come to us. We'll keep you busy. All right. And the last thing that we have, but certainly not the least, is our employment support grant. I talked about the supportive services in the beginning, where we can help someone get scrubs or shoes or welding equipment. This employment support grant are those supportive services, but without the extra eligibility. Maybe you don't need me to hold your hand through the program. Maybe you don't need a cheerleader. Maybe you just need something to fill the gap to get to work. We can do that too. So we have our employment support grant. It's a one-time, less overall amount, but it's much quicker access. So it could be a gas card to get you to work next week until you get your paycheck. We're seeing people in these situations because they've been unemployed for so long, they've been out of work for so long, they're behind on bills. They might just need a little extra support to get things going again. So we're happy to do that as well. It doesn't have to be training related, but it does need to be employment related. So, I need to be able to tie it back to employment somehow. And then the last thing that I want to keep at the front of your minds is we're doing all this together. We co-enroll as much as we can. We co-enroll with as many programs as we can because we want people to feel supported. We want people to feel like all of their needs are being met. I may not know what daycare openings are open, but I can help you look. or I can connect you to someone who can. We want to make sure that individuals have the support they need because it's a crazy time and we're not sure what tomorrow's going to bring. So we want people to feel like they have someone they can call and they have someone that they can use as a support moving forward. Not just in their employment goals, but just in terms of being solid moving forward. So I feel really great about the team we have at the Montrose Workforce Center. We all work together really well, and if I don't know it, Rich probably does. So I use him if I need to. But we have a great team, and we're really happy to help. And though we might not be able to answer all of your questions, we're very excited to try. So thank you very much.
So as usual, we use the microphone for questions. Please do remember we like questions, not long comments.
Don't let him ask the question.
I know. How many people are collecting unemployment in Montrose County at this time right now?
Jim, I can get back to you with that number. I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that we're over, it's like 5.6% unemployment right now in Montrose. Like, I didn't happen to look at the exact number.
A rough idea?
I really can't remember. I'm gonna have to get back to you.
Okay.
Is there a cost to the employer if you lay off an individual? And if there is,
Yes.
is there an advantage to when you go back to hire somebody to go through the workforce?
Well, it only would cost the employer if they lay somebody off and have to pay unemployment benefits for that. Colorado's an at-will state, so anybody can be brought in or let go at any point in time for practically any reason. So there's a lot of places you can go to look for jobs. You know, a lot of people use it, you know, online, Indeed, Glassdoor, places like that. The one thing I would say about that is if they really want some help, they can meet with us in person or virtually or via email or over the phone, whatever the case might be. But they get a lot more in-person service with us as opposed to just doing it online.
So if the employer lays someone off and they want to hire someone else, and they go through the workforce center, and that person doesn't work out, and they lay that person off, is there a cost to the employer then?
No.
No.
There's nothing that we do that costs the employer anything.
So that would be an advantage for the employer to go through the workforce center.
Exactly.
The other question I have is the power of the employee. One of your earlier slides was talking about successes, and low-paying jobs were successful for the business owner, and then better quality jobs were successful for the employee. We just last week we were over in Gunnison. We stopped for a hamburger at McDonald's, and it said there that, you know, because the Arby's was closed right next to it because they didn't have any employees, and McDonald's had a sign now hiring $18 an hour plus housing assistance. Can you talk about the power of the employee that they didn't have before?
Yeah, a lot.
Well, I would say right now it's definitely a job seeker's market. On our Connecting Colorado site, just for our particular region, we have over 600 jobs listed right now. So it's a good time for an employee, prospective applicant to look for a better job, a higher paying job, or get into some kind of a skills program where they can get into something that's more of a quality job than maybe the, you know, flipping the burgers down at McDonald's that they did before, that type of thing. So nobody knows for sure what'll happen tomorrow. I mean, the week of September 4th, a lot of the UI benefits go away, and so people are going to have to start deciding what that looks like. Because if they're on regular unemployment, and they still have an account or a claim, they'll be down to just getting what they get from Colorado unemployment. So the federal programs are all ending. So I just encourage people that this may be the good time to look. You know, before everybody else suddenly decides, hey, I gotta get back to work, I've got bills to pay. And, you know, maybe COVID's starting to finally subside. You know, every time we think we're about there, where we start thinking about opening up to the public again, even if it's just gonna be for a while, a couple days a week or whatever, there's a spike, you know, the Delta variant now. So we have to be careful, you know, and I'm grateful that the state's been very protective of us so that we can still do our job for the people of the state as a whole through all the workforce centers, but you know, the areas and the counties that we serve, especially Montrose, because there was no way that people, when they had all of those, you know, nobody was working last year, no jobs were coming in, everybody got laid off and had to get on unemployment, and I have to say, if it wasn't for workforce centers, they would probably still be fighting to try to get a claim through with unemployment, you know, when there's 200 and, you know, some odd thousand calls, you know, a day's time or whatever, they just couldn't have gotten anywhere. So we were able to help keep that moving and take care of our local residents as well.
Okay, Rich, so this is such a hot jobs market right now. You see help wanted signs everywhere. So when do you think this will at least calm down, and what will be the catalyst for this to slow down this hot market right now? Do you have any ideas? Crystal ball?
No, I didn't bring that with me today. It really needs polishing up after this COVID thing. All I can say is, you know, we just take it one day at a time. Right now, like I said, it happens to be a job seekers market, but if all of a sudden a lot more people start getting back into looking for a job, that's going to flip in a hurry, and then an employer is going to have the ability to really, you know, they might get 100 applications as an example for one position, and they'll be able to pick somebody really good out of that, I'm sure.
So, may I ask the guy from Gunnison, if McDonald's is paying $18 an hour plus benefits, what did you pay for the hamburger?
Same price.
Same as what?
Yeah. Yeah, same price.
So how much longer do you think that's gonna last?
Yeah, not long.
At $18 an hour full
If
benefits?
the owner doesn't mind, you know, tipping out of his the millions he makes.
Sorry, I can't run.
Come on.
I speak loud.
We can't hear that.
So, Rich, what urgency do you see, or have you seen an increase in urgency with the unemployed, with the upcoming ending of the extended benefits to come and utilize your services? Are you seeing, you know, I'm holding out hope that we're going to start seeing more applicants as those benefits expire. Are you seeing that?
Not right yet. So I think, you know, like Amanda talked about in her information section, a lot of people are looking to see if they can get a better job, whatever that looks like. So I can't tell you whether or not all of a sudden after like the week of September 11th, if we're going to be flooded. I mean, I don't know, because we've got all the COVID stuff still kind of going on. And so it's just going to be, we'll have to see. That's all I can tell you.
I would guess they would already be there if they're going to do that. My second question, really quick, is as far as the Delta variant, are you seeing, or is there any discussion at the state level with extending unemployment beyond, or expanding unemployment beyond September 4th at this point?
Well, Colorado UI will continue, as it always has, for those people that are on. But for people that were granted federal assistance this time because of the pandemic, the PUA and PEUC programs and all that kind of stuff, that money's gone. And they're not planning to extend those at any point. And as a general rule, even for Colorado, they never do extensions anymore. It's been a long time. I think maybe 2012 was the last time they did an extension setup.
Well, and with the federal,
With those federal monies, we haven't heard anything. We haven't heard them even talk about it at the federal level. You guys would probably know just at the same time as us whether or not they would get extended. And I would think we would be hearing something about it now, knowing that deadline is coming up, so.
All this talk about McDonald's is making me hungry. So, like, between paying $18 for somebody to come flip hamburgers, are you guys like concerned or wondering if there is, like, as far as the job market is concerned, that we're going to be seeing a lot of innovation? Because if it is a job seekers market, I mean, in my mind, it makes sense to innovate. And there's already a robot called Flippy that literally flips hamburgers. So do you guys think that because that it is a job seekers market, because the cost of labor is going up so high, you know, are we going to see a lot of technological innovation or disruption between, you know, within industries and stuff that could change the landscape of the job market and what you guys do?
That was something that was probably going to happen anyway. A lot of it just got pushed forward faster because of COVID. I know there's at least one retailer that has a robot that, you know, sweeps the floors now instead of hiring custodians to do it, that type of thing. People working remotely is probably going to be one of the #1 things that will happen. You know, let's take, for example, maybe medical billing. I'll just use that one, where somebody could be at home. They don't need to have an office anymore, go and do that job. It could be that way with several different types of jobs. You know, I mean, look at the workforce centers. You know, we had one person in every office, and everybody else worked remotely just to keep everybody safe at that point in time. So I was fortunate enough to be able to do that, and I am not a remote worker type person. I know that. If I can't go to my office and be with where I know I have everything, that just doesn't work for me. But everybody else seemed to enjoy it, so I went to the office every day. It just kind of, everybody else, you know, did their thing, and we all still got paid and all that type of thing. So there's going to be innovation coming, but it was something that was already on the horizon before. And it just got pushed forward, so we will hear more and see more about that type of thing. The US DOL, Department of Labor, has created a remote workers website. Now you can go online and look for jobs that are exclusively from home.
I guess a follow-up to all that is, are you thinking that because innovation is inevitable, that it's going to be harder to find, you know, more job openings for organic organisms like ourselves?
Well, what we always get told, and this information comes from the Future of Work that it was created in Colorado by executive order of the governor, and they're the ones charged with looking at what's everything going to look like down the line. So what we're hearing is, even though some of these jobs maybe go away, they're not going to have anybody sweeping the floor excuse me, anymore, but they're going to have somebody who knows how to fix the robot or keeping working with, you know, maintenance and things like that. So where one may disappear, another one will come along. So
what is the average Colorado unemployment benefits plus the federal unemployment benefits? What is the average?
well, the average varies on how much an individual made at any given time. And it's only a certain percentage. I think it might be, don't quote me on this, but I want to think it might only be about 45% of what they normally made. So nobody's sitting at home, you know, raking it in per se.
You can't give me a dollar sign then?
It depends on the individual. So what you would get on unemployment and what I would get would most likely not match.
But the federal is 300, right?
The federal was always set at 300. Or, yeah, per week. For a while, it was 600. So,
I want to say I read it was about $18.25 was kind of the average per hour was kind of the average amount of wage that might motivate someone to get off unemployment. It's not really an average of what people are making while on unemployment, but that's about the hourly wage that would maybe encourage someone to get off unemployment.
So housing is a critical need in Montrose, and we have a lot of people living out of their car. How is that affecting the employment situation?
It's a huge factor. At our workforce board meeting that we held just last month, the hospital, that's their biggest issue right now when it comes to recruiting people from outside our community. They were even they were even considering the possibility of building their own housing just for recruitment purposes. So it's a huge factor. Housing and also daycare. Not either finding a place for families to take their kids while they work, but also the cost of how much daycare costs. So it's a huge factor.
With the training that you provide, have you seen an increase in individuals taking advantage of that? Or do you predict there will be an advantage with the September 4th deadline?
Yeah, we've certainly seen people kind of an uptick in that. There's certainly more interest. This program year started July 1st. Seems like we're getting more interest, more people that we're contacting. We have them do quite a bit of groundwork. We have them do a lot of homework and research on the labor market and stuff. And so that can sometimes weed people out. They don't necessarily want to do that work. But I feel like we're getting more interest. We may not get more people through enrollment, but we're certainly getting more people that are like, oh, maybe this is an option for me. So I feel like we're sending out more interest packets.
Question is, again, I mentioned earlier that we see a lot of help wanted signs at the fast food restaurants and everything, but I'm not seeing high school students as often as I used to see. I'm seeing a lot of older folks, it looks like older, maybe housewives and so on, either picking up secondary jobs or just that's their main job. But where are the high school workers? Are you seeing much of that? I know that's not really your area, but I would think if I was in high school, it was hard to find a job when I was in high school, so I would think all those, everybody that's in high school would want a part-time job or something like that would be working. I'm just not seeing that.
Actually, I'm surprised to hear that you're not seeing that because I was reading, so typically 25% of kids or teenagers between the ages of 16 and 19, that 25% is about the amount of the labor force that is out there for that age group. It's actually it's gone up to 36%. It's actually a teenage job market right now, in a way. A lot of positions are going to teenagers because they're the ones that they have no problem getting a job without benefits, and they're just excited to have their first paycheck. So, I mean, my stepson, he's been working since he could. He's so excited. He works over at the movie theater. Once the movie theater opened back up again, he's been there making money as he can, and as long as there's hours. The problem with movie theaters, they're only allowed to be open so many hours right now because there's not a lot being released out to the theaters these days. So, but they're getting out there, and we actually held. We couldn't really hold hiring events and job fairs in person, but we held. Three of us all held a virtual hiring or job fair with Nuclear High School. Back in, April or May, and that went over really, really well. We had, I think just about the entire school was involved with that. So when we can have those kinds of opportunities, we try to capitalize on it.
Well, thank you very much for being here this morning. I'm sure some of us are not looking for jobs, but it's nice to hear how you're helping your people who are. So let's let Kathy talk to us about next week.
Okay, just really quick, if you need a business card, if you're interested in that, we have them up here at the table. So, thank you.